The office smelled faintly of fresh ink and coffee, the kind of place where ambition hummed louder than kindness. Behind the wide glass desk sat Mr. Harlan, the company's CEO, a man known for his expensive suits and his unforgiving eyes. Across from him stood Emma, her hands resting protectively on her swollen belly. 7 months pregnant, she was glowing with a quiet strength, though her eyes betrayed the fear she carried. "Emma," Harlan said, his tone as cold as the polished marble floor beneath their feet, "this company cannot afford distractions. And you, in your condition, are exactly that." Emma's throat tightened. She had given 5 loyal years to this company, staying late, missing birthdays, sacrificing weekends. Yet now, her body, her motherhood, was being branded as a liability. "Sir, I can still work," she pleaded softly. "I've managed all my deadlines. My pregnancy doesn't mean my dedication is gone." But Harlan's lips curled into a thin smile, the kind that cut deeper than words. "You don't understand. Clients don't take well to fragile employees. We need someone sharp, dependable, not someone who might disappear at any moment to have a baby." The words hit Emma like a slap. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she forced herself to breathe, to stay strong. "Are you firing me?" Harlan leaned back in his leather chair, tapping a pen against his desk with cruel patience. "Consider this a necessary business decision. Your position has been filled. Security will escort you out." Tears blurred Emma's vision, but she refused to let them fall in front of him. She lifted her chin, her hand pressing against her belly as though shielding her child from his venom. "You may think you're powerful," she whispered, her voice trembling yet steady, "but one day, life has a way of turning tables." Harlan chuckled dismissively. "Fairy tales, Miss Emma. Life doesn't work that way. Now leave." As she walked out of the office for the last time, Emma's heels clicking softly against the floor, whispers followed her. Some colleagues pitied her, some stayed silent out of fear. But deep inside, Emma made a silent promise, to her unborn child, to herself, that this humiliation would not be the end of her story. This was the beginning. Emma's world collapsed the day she was fired. With no job, no savings, and a child on the way, she faced the brutal reality of survival. The rent notices piled up on her kitchen table. The refrigerator was nearly empty, holding only a half carton of milk and some bread. At night, she lay awake, one hand on her belly, whispering, "Don't worry, baby. Mama will figure this out." Her family lived far away, and her friends, those who once shared laughter and coffee breaks with her, had vanished after her dismissal. Only silence remained. When her daughter, Lily, was born, Emma's life became even harder. She worked small jobs, waitressing at a diner, cleaning offices after hours, typing documents for strangers on borrowed computers. She carried Lily everywhere, sometimes cradled in her arms while she mopped floors late at night. There were days Emma thought she couldn't go on. The exhaustion was bone deep, and the shame of her firing still haunted her like a shadow. But whenever Lily's tiny fingers curled around hers, she found a strength she never knew she had. One evening, after a particularly long shift, Emma sat by the window of her tiny apartment. Lily was asleep in a crib Emma had bought secondhand. Outside, the city lights flickered like distant stars. Emma whispered to herself, "They thought I was weak. They thought motherhood was the end of me. But one day, I'll prove them wrong." It was in that quiet moment of despair and determination that Emma decided she wouldn't just survive, she would rise. She enrolled in night classes, studying business and finance while balancing work and motherhood. Every penny she earned went into books, tuition, and Lily's needs. She studied after midnight, her eyes heavy, her body aching, but her heart burning with purpose. Years passed. Slowly, the struggle transformed into progress. Emma built a small online business, offering consulting services for startups. At first, clients were few and payments small. But her reputation grew, because unlike the cold executives she once worked under, Emma treated her clients with kindness and genuine care. And as her business grew, so did her confidence. The girl who once walked out of Harlan's office in tears was gone. In her place stood a woman forged by fire, strong, resilient, and unstoppable. What Emma didn't know was that fate was already preparing the day she would cross paths with Harlan again, but this time, on very different terms. The years rolled by, and Emma's dedication never wavered. Her consulting business, once a small side hustle, began gaining serious traction. Word of mouth spread, her clients praised her honesty, her work ethic, and her ability to see opportunities where others only saw risk. Soon, she wasn't just consulting. She began investing. Small at first, helping local shops restructure, giving advice to struggling startups, guiding them toward growth. Many of those businesses thrived, crediting Emma with their survival. With each success, her reputation grew. Investors began to notice her, and before long, Emma was running her own company, a firm dedicated to helping small businesses rise from the ground up. Meanwhile, Lily was growing into a bright, curious little girl. She loved sitting in her mother's office, doodling on notepads while Emma typed away at her desk. Sometimes, Emma would pause, stroke her daughter's hair, and whisper, "You're the reason I keep going. One day, this will all be yours." But beneath her success, Emma never forgot the pain of her past. The memory of Harlan, the arrogant man who fired her without a second thought, still burned like a scar. One evening, Emma attended a major business conference in the city. She walked into the grand hall, wearing a sleek navy suit, her hair tied back, her presence commanding respect. As she mingled with investors and CEOs, she spotted a familiar name on the event schedule. Harlan Enterprises. Emma's heart skipped. She hadn't heard that name in years. Her lips curved into a quiet smile. So, he's still around. Later that night, Emma sat across from an old acquaintance who leaned closer and whispered, "Funny thing about Harlan Enterprises. They've been going downhill for years. Poor management, outdated strategies. They're desperate for investors now." Emma's mind began to race. The company that once tossed her aside like she was nothing, was falling apart. Over the next few months, Emma watched closely. She researched Harlan's company, studying every financial report, every desperate attempt they made to stay afloat. And then she made her move. Through her firm, Emma placed a series of strategic investments, quietly acquiring shares of the struggling business. Piece by piece, she gained control, until eventually, Emma became the majority owner. It was poetic justice. The company that once rejected her now belonged to her. And soon, she would come face to face with the man who had nearly destroyed her life. The boardroom was silent except for the clicking of pens and the shuffling of papers. Harlan, now older, his hair streaked with gray, sat at the head of the long polished table. His once proud posture was slouched, and the stress lines on his face told the story of a man fighting to hold on to power. He didn't know who the new majority shareholder was, the mysterious investor who had saved his crumbling company from bankruptcy. But he was eager to meet them, desperate to secure his position as CEO. The door opened. Footsteps echoed across the marble floor. Emma walked in. The room froze. Her presence was calm but commanding, her sharp eyes sweeping across the table before landing on Harlan. His face paled. His jaw dropped ever so slightly. "Emma?" he muttered, almost unable to believe what he was seeing. "Yes, Harlan," she said coolly, taking the seat at the head of the table, the one that used to belong to him. "It's been a long time." The other board members shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tension. Emma continued, her tone measured but firm. "Years ago, you told me I wasn't worth keeping on this company's payroll. That my pregnancy made me a liability." She leaned forward. "Well, here I am, no longer an employee, no longer a liability. I'm the owner." Harlan stammered. This is absurd. You can't just." "Oh, but I can," Emma interrupted, sliding a stack of documents across the table. "I bought the majority shares. Legally, this company belongs to me. And effective immediately, you are relieved of your position as CEO." A collective gasp filled the room. Harlan's face turned red with rage and shame. He pounded the table. "You can't do this to me. I built this company with my own hands." Emma's eyes hardened. "And you destroyed it with your arrogance. You treated people as disposable. You treated me as disposable. But I learned something, Harlan, people aren't liabilities. They're the foundation of every success." Silence hung in the air. Harlan's fists trembled, but he could do nothing. The board members were already nodding, accepting Emma's leadership. Emma stood, her voice steady but cutting. "When you fired me, you thought you ended my story. But in reality, you lit the fire that made me unstoppable. And now, Harlan, you work for me." Harlan sank back in his chair, defeated. Emma didn't smile. She didn't need to. The justice was in the silence, in the stunned faces around the table, in the undeniable truth. The power had shifted. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Emma's leadership reshaped the company from the inside out. She introduced flexible schedules for parents, wellness programs for employees, and mentorship opportunities for young professionals. The once toxic environment began to blossom into a place of loyalty, creativity, and growth. Employees who had felt invisible under Harlan's reign now walked the halls with pride. Productivity soared, not because of fear, but because of respect. One morning, Emma walked through the office lobby with her daughter, now a bright, confident young girl. The little one looked up at her mother with wide eyes and whispered, "Mom, is this your company?" Emma smiled gently. "Yes, sweetheart. This is ours." At that moment, Harlan walked by, no longer in a suit, no longer the feared boss. He had been reassigned to a lower role, stripped of power but kept on the payroll by Emma's deliberate choice. Their eyes met briefly. For the first time, Harlan didn't look angry, just tired, almost remorseful. He opened his mouth to speak, but Emma simply gave him a polite nod and walked past. Forgiveness wasn't necessary, justice had already been served. As Emma stood in her new office overlooking the city skyline, she reflected on her journey. She had been cast aside, humiliated, told she was worthless. But through resilience, intelligence, and sheer determination, she had risen higher than anyone expected. Her story was no longer about revenge. It was about transformation, about proving that no one, not even the most powerful, could extinguish the fire of someone determined to rise. And as the sun set behind the skyline, Emma whispered to herself, "Never let anyone decide your worth. Only you can do that." Fade out.